The mimosa in my hand tasted like regret and artificial orange flavoring. I should have known something was wrong when Tessa insisted on brunch at Meridian, the kind of place where they charge $18 for avocado toast and the waitstaff treats you like you're personally responsible for their student loans. "Owen, you're doing that thing again," Tessa said, not looking up from her phone. Her perfectly manicured nails clicked against the screen like tiny hammers building my coffin. "What thing?" I asked, though I already knew. The thing where I existed in her presence without explicit permission. "That brooding thing. It's Sunday. Can't you just be normal for once?" Normal. Right. Because normal guys plan elaborate brunches to salvage relationships that are circling the drain faster than water in a broken garbage disposal. I'm Owen Ferris, 37 years old, and I make a living fixing other people's computer problems. Turns out I'm significantly better with machines than I am with humans. The restaurant buzzed with the kind of aggressive cheerfulness that only comes from people spending too much money on breakfast foods. Tessa had chosen a corner table. Strategic positioning, I realized later. Maximum visibility for whatever she had planned. "Your friends are late," I observed, checking my watch. Lisa and Marcy were supposed to join us at 11. It was now 11:30, and Tessa seemed remarkably unconcerned about their absence. "They'll be here," she said with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what was coming next. That should have been my second warning sign. The first was when she'd suggested this brunch in the first place, 3 days after our biggest fight yet. We'd been engaged for 8 months, living together for 2 years, and lately every conversation felt like negotiating a hostage situation where I was both the negotiator and the hostage. "Look, Tess, about Thursday night." "Don't." She held up one perfectly manicured finger. "Just don't, Owen. We'll talk about everything when Lisa and Marcy get here." Since when did our relationship issues require a panel discussion? I took another sip of my overpriced mimosa and watched my fiancé scroll through Instagram with the focused intensity of a surgeon performing brain surgery. Tessa Grant was beautiful in the way that required constant maintenance, like a classic car or a swimming pool. 34 years old, with the kind of blonde hair that came from a bottle but looked natural enough to fool most people. She worked in PR for a downtown firm, which basically meant she got paid to make other people's problems disappear. I was starting to suspect she'd been practicing on our relationship. The restaurant door chimed, and Lisa Martinez walked in like she owned the place. She probably could have. Her husband was some kind of investment banker who made more money in a month than I made in a year. Behind her came Marcy Thompson, trailing the perpetual air of someone who'd rather be anywhere else but was too polite to say so. "Sorry we're late," Lisa announced, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Traffic was absolutely insane. She wasn't sorry. I could tell by the way she avoided eye contact while she said it. Lisa had never liked me. Something about me not being ambitious enough for her best friend, as if ambition was measured solely by how much money you made or how many people you could fire on a Tuesday morning. "No problem," I said, standing to pull out chairs for them. My mother raised me to be polite, even to people who clearly thought I was a waste of oxygen. "Oh, Owen," Lisa said, settling into her chair with theatrical precision. "You're so considerate." The way she said considerate made it sound like a character flaw, like being thoughtful was somehow equivalent to being weak. Marcy gave me a sympathetic smile that made my stomach clench. Sympathy meant she knew something I didn't. In my experience, sympathy was just pity wearing a disguise. "So," I said, attempting to steer the conversation into safer waters, "how's everyone's weekend going?" "Oh, you know," Lisa said with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Same old, although some people have been having much more interesting weekends than others." She exchanged a look with Tessa that lasted about 2 seconds too long. It was the kind of look that said they'd been talking about me, and I probably wouldn't like what they'd been saying. "Lisa?" Marcy said quietly. Maybe we should order first. Good idea, Tessa said, finally looking up from her phone. I'm starving. She wasn't starving. Tessa never ate when she was nervous, and she'd been picking at her food like a bird for the past week. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. Our fight on Thursday had been about money, specifically about whether we could afford the wedding we'd been planning. I'd suggested maybe scaling back a little, and she'd acted like I'd suggested we get married in a gas station bathroom. The waitress appeared with the kind of forced enthusiasm that meant she was working for tips. We ordered. Tessa got a salad she wouldn't eat. Lisa ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. Marcy asked for pancakes like she was confessing to a crime, and I got eggs Benedict because I figured I might as well enjoy my last meal. So, Owen, Lisa said after the waitress left, Tessa tells me you've been having some concerns about the wedding. Concerns, like I was worried about the weather or whether the flowers would match the tablecloths. I just think we should be realistic about what we can afford, I said carefully. Weddings are expensive and— Oh, please, Lisa interrupted. It's one day, the most important day of a woman's life. Surely you don't want to cheap out on that. Cheap out. As if wanting to avoid bankruptcy was some kind of moral failing. It's not about being cheap, I said, feeling my jaw tighten. It's about being responsible. We're talking about $40,000 for one day. That's more than some people make in a year. Well, Lisa said with a smile that could have cut diamond, maybe some people should have thought about that before they proposed. The table went quiet. Even the ambient restaurant noise seemed to fade into the background. I looked at Tessa, waiting for her to say something, anything, in my defense. She was staring at her salad like it contained the secrets of the universe. I think, Marcy said softly, that Owen has a point. 40,000 is a lot of money. Stay out of this, Marcy, Lisa snapped. This is between Owen and Tessa. Actually, Tessa said, finally looking up, it's not. She stood up slowly, like she was rising from a throne. The movement was deliberate, theatrical. People at nearby tables started to notice. I've been thinking about this for weeks, she continued, her voice carrying across the restaurant like she was giving a speech. And I've made a decision. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't good. This was the opposite of good. I'm officially calling off the wedding, she announced, loud enough for everyone within a 50-foot radius to hear. I really don't love you, Owen. I haven't for months. Maybe I never did. The restaurant didn't go silent. That only happens in movies. Instead, it got that particular kind of quiet where everyone is pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. My fiancé had just dumped me in public, in front of her friends, in the most humiliating way possible. Part of me wanted to crawl under the table and hide. Part of me wanted to scream. Instead, I started laughing. You know what? I said, pulling off my engagement ring and setting it on the table next to her untouched salad. Thank you. Thank you. Lisa looked confused, like I'd just started speaking ancient Greek. Yeah, thank you, for doing this in public, in front of witnesses, for making it absolutely clear what kind of person you are. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. I'm going to throw a party next weekend, a dodged-a-bullet party. You should come, Tessa. You can bring your new boyfriend. Her face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Tell me, how long have you been seeing Kellen Price? The silence that followed was different from before. This was the silence of people holding their breath, waiting for the explosion. How did you— Lucky guess, I said, though it wasn't luck at all. I'd seen the texts on her phone 3 days ago, the ones she thought she'd deleted. Enjoy your new life, Tessa. Try not to screw it up as badly as you screwed up ours. I was halfway to the door when I heard the restaurant door chime again. I turned around and saw Kellen Price walking in like he owned the place. 29 years old, 6 feet tall, with the kind of artificially perfect smile that belonged on a toothpaste commercial. He owned a nightclub downtown and thought that made him some kind of urban royalty. He walked straight to our table and kissed Tessa right there in front of everyone. The few remaining conversations in the restaurant died completely. I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Not of them kissing. That would have been petty. I took a picture of the whole scene. Tessa in Kellen's arms, Lisa looking smug, Marcy looking mortified, and my engagement ring sitting abandoned next to a wilted salad. "Perfect," I said loud enough for them to hear. "This is going to look great on social media." Then I walked out, leaving them to deal with the stares and whispers of 50 strangers who just witnessed the most public breakup in downtown restaurant history. The funny thing was, I meant what I'd said about dodging a bullet. I just didn't realize yet how big that bullet was, or how much damage it had been designed to cause. My condo felt different when I got home. Smaller somehow, like the walls had moved closer together while I was gone. Everything reminded me of Tessa. The throw pillows she'd insisted we needed, the coffee table books about interior design that nobody ever read, the framed photo of us at her company Christmas party where I looked uncomfortable in a rented tux. I walked around the place like a tourist in my own life, seeing it all with fresh eyes. How much of this stuff was actually mine? The leather couch was hers. The abstract art that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto a canvas. Definitely hers. Even the coffee maker was some fancy Italian thing she'd bought because regular coffee wasn't good enough for her sophisticated palate. My phone buzzed. A text from my friend Hannah. "Heard what happened. You okay?" News traveled fast in our social circle. I wasn't surprised. Lisa probably had the story posted on every social media platform before I'd even made it to my car. I called Hannah instead of texting back. Some conversations required actual human voices. "Owen?" She picked up on the first ring. "Jesus, I'm so sorry. What a complete bitch." Hannah Chen was my closest friend, and possibly the only person in my life who'd never pretended to like Tessa. She worked as a graphic designer for a marketing firm and had the kind of brutal honesty that made her terrible at small talk but excellent in a crisis. "I'm okay," I said, which was mostly true. "Actually, I think I'm better than okay. I think I'm relieved." "Really? Because if you want to get drunk and key her car, I'm available." Tempting, but no. I'm thinking more along the lines of strategic revenge. Ooh, I like strategic revenge. What did you have in mind? I told her about the picture I'd taken, about Kellen showing up like he was in some kind of romantic movie, about the way Lisa had looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Wait," Hannah said. "Back up. How did you know about Kellen?" I explained about the texts I'd seen, the late nights Tessa had been working, the way she'd started dressing differently and wearing perfume to bed. "Owen, you need to document all of this. I'm serious. Get proof." "Proof of what? We're not married. It's not like I can take her to court for being a cheating bitch." "No. But you can make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person she is. Trust me, in the court of public opinion, evidence matters." She had a point. Tessa worked in PR. Her reputation was everything. If people found out she'd been cheating, planning this whole public humiliation, it would destroy her professionally. "I know someone," Hannah continued, "a private investigator, Claire Cho. She's good, and she's discreet. I'm not hiring a private investigator to follow my ex-fiancé around." "Why not? She obviously put a lot of planning into humiliating you today. Don't you want to know how long this has been going on? How many people were in on it?" The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. This hadn't been a spontaneous decision. Tessa had planned this, orchestrated it like one of her PR campaigns. The restaurant choice, the timing, having her friends there as witnesses, it was all calculated to cause maximum damage to my ego and my reputation. "Give me Claire's number," I said. I met Claire Cho the next morning at a coffee shop near my office. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with short black hair and the kind of alert eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. "Hannah told me about your situation," she said after we'd ordered. I'm sorry. Public breakups are the worst. It's not just the breakup, I said. It's the way it happened. The whole thing felt staged. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told her about the texts, about Tessa's behavior over the past few months, about the brunch and Kellen's perfectly timed entrance. Claire took notes in a small notebook, occasionally asking questions that made me realize how much I'd been ignoring. When did you first suspect she was cheating? She asked. About 3 weeks ago. She started working late more often, and when I'd call her office, they'd say she'd already left. Little things like that. And the texts you saw, when was that? Thursday night, after our fight about the wedding budget. She left her phone on the bathroom counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't trying to snoop, but it buzzed, and I glanced at it. The message preview said something about, "Can't wait for Sunday," and it was from someone named Kay. Claire nodded. What exactly do you want me to find out? Everything. How long this has been going on? Who else knew about it? Whether this whole public humiliation thing was planned. I paused. And I want to know about Kellen Price. Who is he, really? What's his story? That I can definitely help with. Give me a week. She was back in touch in 3 days. We need to meet, she said when she called. I found some interesting things. We met at the same coffee shop. Claire had a manila folder thick with papers and photographs. The good news, she said, is that your instincts were right. This was definitely planned. The bad news is that it's worse than you thought. She spread photos across the table. Tessa and Kellen at restaurants, at his nightclub, at a hotel downtown. The timestamps showed the photos went back almost 4 months. They've been together since January, Claire said. But here's the interesting part. They weren't trying very hard to hide it. It's like they wanted to get caught. What do you mean? Look at these locations. Public places, restaurants where Tessa's co-workers might see them, his club where everyone has camera phones. If they were trying to keep this secret, they were doing a terrible job. She pulled out another set of photos. This is from last Friday night, Kellen's club. The photos showed Tessa, Lisa, and Marcy at a corner table, heads close together, obviously planning something. In one shot, Lisa was holding up her phone like she was recording something. They were rehearsing, Claire said. Your friend Lisa was filming Tessa practicing her breakup speech. My hands clenched into fists. They filmed it? Gets worse. I have a contact who works at the club. He says Kellen was bragging about his plan to humiliate you publicly. Apparently, he thought it would be funny to have you dumped in front of a crowd, then show up like some kind of conquering hero. Why? What did I ever do to him? Claire shrugged. Some people just like causing pain, but there's more. Kellen Price isn't exactly what he seems. She pulled out a background check report. Real name is Kevin Pratt. He's from Ohio, not California, like he tells people. The nightclub is failing. He's 3 months behind on rent and owes money to some very unpleasant people. He's been looking for an exit strategy. What kind of exit strategy? The kind that involves marrying someone with a good job and excellent credit. Someone like your ex-fiancé. The pieces were starting to fit together. Tessa made good money, had savings, owned her car outright. To someone like Kellen, she probably looked like a winning lottery ticket. There's one more thing, Claire said. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. This was posted on Instagram yesterday. The video showed clips from the restaurant, filmed from multiple angles. Someone had edited it together with dramatic music and text overlays that made me look pathetic, and Tessa looked like some kind of romantic heroine finally finding true love. Who posted this? Account called Dramatown USA. Anonymous, but the editing style matches other videos posted by someone with professional experience, someone who knows how to make viral content. Lisa, I said. She works for a digital marketing company. That's my guess too. This video has been shared over 10,000 times since yesterday. You're internet famous, Owen. Unfortunately, not in a good way. I watched the video again, seeing myself through the eyes of strangers. The way I'd laughed looked unhinged. The way I'd stood up looked aggressive. They'd edited out everything I'd said about dodging bullets and Kellen, making it look like I'd just stormed off like a spoiled child. "What can we do about this?" Claire smiled for the first time since I'd met her. "Well, that depends. How badly do you want revenge? What did you have in mind?" "The video was edited to make you look bad, but they made some mistakes. Look at this timestamp." She pointed to the corner of one shot. "This shows Kellen kissing Tessa at 12:47, but look at this shot of you at the table." She swiped to another frame. "This timestamp shows 12:52. You're still sitting down, which means Kellen was kissing her before she officially broke up with you. That's not romantic. That's just cruel." "Can you prove that?" "Already did. I have the original footage from 3 different phones. Lisa was so eager to make her viral video that she didn't check the timestamps carefully. One frame shows Kellen in the background before he was supposed to be there. I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. What else? I did some digging into Kellen's business. The nightclub is in serious trouble. He owes back taxes, rent, and money to suppliers. But here's the interesting part. He's been telling people he's about to come into some money. A lot of money. From Tessa? That's what I thought at first. But her savings aren't enough to save his business. So I kept digging. Claire pulled out another document. Kellen took out a life insurance policy on himself 6 months ago. Big policy. The kind that pays out enough to solve all his financial problems. Life insurance isn't unusual. No, but making your new girlfriend the beneficiary before you've even broken up her engagement is, especially when you've been bragging to people about having a foolproof plan to get rich quick. The implications hit me like a truck. You think he's planning to fake his own death? Or worse, I think he's planning to make sure something happens to Tessa after they get married. Either way, your ex-fiancé is in more danger than she realizes. I stared at the photos spread across the table. Tessa laughing at restaurants, holding hands with Kellen, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. She might be a cheating, manipulative bitch, but she didn't deserve to be murdered for her money. "We have to warn her." "Do we?" Claire asked quietly. "She humiliated you in public, cheated on you for months, and helped orchestrate a viral video designed to destroy your reputation. Are you sure you want to save her?" I thought about it for a long moment. The old Owen would have called Tessa immediately, would have rushed to protect her even after everything she'd done. But the old Owen was the guy who got dumped in a restaurant while his fiancé's friends filmed it for social media. "I want to save her," I said finally. "But not yet. First, I want some payback." Claire grinned. "Now you're talking my language." The plan we came up with was beautiful in its simplicity. If Tessa and her friends wanted to play games with social media, we'd play games right back. The difference was, we had the truth on our side. Claire had given me copies of everything, the photos, the timeline, the background check on Kellen, even the original unedited footage from the restaurant. It was enough ammunition to destroy all of them, but I wanted to be smart about it. Revenge served cold and all that. My first move was subtle. I created a new Instagram account called Dodged a Bullet and posted a single photo, me at a bar with a beer, smiling genuinely for the first time in months. The caption read, "Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is the worst thing that can happen to you. Thanks for setting me free, T. Hashtag Dodged a Bullet, hashtag new chapter, hashtag best decision she ever made." Within an hour, it had 50 likes and a dozen comments from friends and coworkers who'd seen the viral video. The comments were supportive, funny, and most importantly, they made me look like someone who was handling the situation with grace and humor. Then I waited. It took 2 days for Tessa to take the bait. She called me at work, her voice shrill with anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she said without preamble. "That Instagram post is pathetic. You're making yourself look desperate." Am I? Because the comments seem pretty positive. People are saying I look happier than I have in years. Owen, this is ridiculous. We're adults. We don't need to air our private business on social media. The irony was so thick, I could have cut it with a knife. Funny, that's not what you said when your friend Lisa posted that video of you dumping me. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Tell me, Tessa, how does it feel to be internet famous? Because that video has been shared over 20,000 times now. You're practically a celebrity. I didn't ask her to post that. But you didn't ask her to take it down either. More silence. I could practically hear her brain working, trying to figure out how much I knew. What do you want, Owen? Nothing from you. I just wanted to thank you again for doing me such a huge favor. I'm meeting new people, going out more, having actual fun for the first time in 2 years. It's amazing what happens when you're not constantly walking on eggshells around someone. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference, though I realize that might be a foreign concept to you. She hung up on me. I wasn't surprised. My second move was more direct. I called Malik, my co-worker and closest friend at the office. Malik was a software engineer with a talent for making things go viral, usually accidentally. He'd once posted a video of his cat that got 3 million views, though he still couldn't explain why. I need a favor, I told him over lunch. I need you to help me make a video. What kind of video? The kind that tells the truth. I showed him everything Claire had found. The photos, the timeline, the evidence that the whole restaurant scene had been planned. Malik's eyes got wider as he scrolled through the documents. Dude, this is insane. She really planned the whole thing? Down to the last detail. And now, I want to return the favor. We spent the weekend putting together a response video. Nothing dramatic or emotional, just a calm, factual presentation of the evidence. I sat in my living room and spoke directly to the camera, explaining what had really happened. Hi, I'm Owen Ferris. You might know me as the guy who got dumped in a restaurant last week. The video of that incident has been viewed by a lot of people, and I think it's time you knew the whole story. I showed the photos of Tessa and Kellen together, dated months before our breakup. I showed the timestamp evidence proving Kellen was at the restaurant before Tessa officially ended things. I showed screenshots of the planning session at Kellen's club, with Lisa filming Tessa practicing her speech. I'm not sharing this to hurt anyone, I said at the end. I'm sharing it because I believe people deserve to know the truth. My ex-fiancée is entitled to be with whoever she wants, but she's not entitled to rewrite history to make herself look better. We posted it on YouTube at midnight on Sunday. By Monday morning, it had 10,000 views. By Monday afternoon, it was trending. The comments were brutal. People who'd felt sorry for Tessa after seeing the original video were now calling her everything from a sociopath to a professional victim. The hashtag planned humiliation started trending, with people sharing their own stories of being publicly embarrassed by exes. But the real explosion came when someone recognized Kellen in the background of one of the photos and started digging into his business. Within hours, people had found public records showing his club's financial troubles, his real name, and his history of failed businesses in 3 different states. Owen? Hannah called me Tuesday morning. Have you seen the news? What news? Turn on Channel 7. I flipped to the local morning show just in time to see a segment about viral videos and public shaming. They showed clips from both the original video and my response, then brought on a relationship expert to discuss the ethics of public breakups. What we're seeing here, the expert said, is a perfect example of how social media can be weaponized in personal relationships. The original video was clearly designed to humiliate Mr. Ferris, but his response has turned the tables completely. The anchor nodded seriously. Do you think his response was appropriate? I think it was brilliant. Instead of getting emotional or defensive, he simply presented facts. He let the evidence speak for itself, and now the public can make their own judgments. My phone started ringing. First, it was friends and co-workers congratulating me. Then it was reporters wanting interviews. By noon, I had requests from 3 different talk shows, but the call I was waiting for came Wednesday evening. Owen. Tessa's voice was barely above a whisper. We need to talk. Do we? Please. This has gotten out of hand. People are calling my office, my boss is asking questions, and Kellen is furious. He's talking about suing you. Let him try. Everything in that video is true, and I have documentation to prove it. You don't understand. He's not the person I thought he was. Something in her voice made me pause. She sounded scared. What do you mean? Can we meet somewhere? Somewhere public? I think I made a mistake. Part of me wanted to hang up on her. She'd made her bed and now she could lie in it. But Claire's warnings about Kellen echoed in my head. Whatever Tessa had done to me, she didn't deserve to end up as a statistic. Fine. Coffee shop on 5th Street. 1 hour. She was already there when I arrived, hunched over a corner table like she was trying to disappear. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup. This wasn't the confident woman who dumped me in front of a restaurant full of strangers. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. Talk. Kellen isn't who he said he was. His real name is Kevin, he's from Ohio, and his club is going bankrupt. But that's not the worst part. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. You better fix this shit with your ex, or you'll regret it. He sent that this morning, she said, along with about 20 others just like it. He's been calling me names, threatening me, saying it's my fault his business is failing because I didn't keep you quiet. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm scared, and because... She looked up at me for the first time since I'd sat down. Because you were right, about everything. The wedding, the money, all of it. I was so caught up in trying to have this perfect life that I forgot what actually mattered. Which was... you. Us. The fact that you actually loved me, even when I was being impossible. I stared at her for a long moment. 3 weeks ago, hearing her say that would have made me forgive everything. Now it just made me sad. Tessa, you didn't just cheat on me. You planned to humiliate me in public, had your friends film it, and then let them post it online for the world to see. That's not a mistake. That's calculated cruelty. I know, and I'm sorry. I was angry about the wedding thing, and when Kellen suggested the restaurant scene, she nodded miserably. He said it would be romantic, like a movie. He said you'd get over it eventually, and we'd all laugh about it later. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that I was the heroine of some great love story instead of just another cheating fiancé. I felt something I hadn't expected, pity. Tessa had always been susceptible to flattery, always wanted to be the center of attention. Kellen had played her perfectly. What do you want from me? I asked. Help. I don't know how to get away from him. He has keys to my apartment, he knows where I work, and he's making it clear that he's not going to just disappear quietly. Call the police. And tell them what? That my boyfriend is sending me mean text messages? They'll laugh me out of the station. She had a point. The texts were threatening but vague enough that they probably wouldn't qualify as harassment in legal terms. There's something else, she said quietly. He's been asking about my finances, my savings account, my retirement fund, whether I have life insurance through work. At first I thought he was just trying to plan our future together, but now you think he's planning something else. I think he's planning to marry me and then find a way to get rid of me. I pulled out my phone and called Claire. It's Owen. We need to meet, tonight, and bring everything you have on Kellen Price. Claire met us at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the coffee was strong, the pie was questionable, and nobody asked questions about why you needed to have clandestine meetings at 11 o'clock at night. Tessa looked even worse under the harsh fluorescent lights. She kept glancing toward the windows, like she expected Kellen to materialize out of the darkness. "Tell her what you told me," I said to Claire after we'd ordered coffee. Claire spread her files across the sticky table. "Kellen Price, real name Kevin Pratt, has been running the same scam for 5 years. He targets women with good jobs and savings accounts, romances them quickly, then finds ways to separate them from their money." "How?" Tessa asked. "Different methods. In Cleveland, he convinced a teacher to invest her retirement fund in his business venture. In Phoenix, he married a nurse and then cleaned out their joint account before disappearing. In Denver, he got engaged to a bank manager and took out credit cards in her name." Tessa's face went white. "What happened to them?" "The teacher lost everything and had to move back in with her parents. The nurse declared bankruptcy. The bank manager—" Claire paused. "The bank manager died in what police ruled an accidental drowning." "Oh, God. The life insurance policy he took out on himself? It's not for him. It's a joint policy that covers both of you, with him as the beneficiary if something happens to you." Tessa started shaking. "He wants to kill me. I think that's his endgame, yes. But first he needs to marry you and make sure you don't have any family or friends who might ask uncomfortable questions if you suddenly die in an accident." That's why he wanted the public breakup, I realized. He wasn't just humiliating me, he was isolating her, making sure everyone thought she was a terrible person, so they wouldn't care what happened to her. Claire nodded. Classic abuser tactic. Destroy the victim's support system, then move in for the kill. We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the implications. Tessa had been played by an expert, and now she was trapped. "What can we do?" I asked. "Legally? Not much. We can't prove he's planning to hurt her, and everything he's done so far is technically legal. Morally questionable, but legal. So we can't go to the police. We can try, but without evidence of an actual crime, they'll tell us to come back when something happens. By then, it might be too late." Tessa looked up from her untouched coffee. "What if we could get him to confess?" "What do you mean?" "What if we could get him to admit what he's planning? On recording." Claire and I exchanged glances. "That's dangerous," Claire said. "If he suspects you're onto him." "He already suspects something. The threats are getting worse, and he's been following me. Yesterday, I saw him parked outside my office. This morning, he was at the coffee shop near my apartment." "We could set up a meeting," I said slowly. "Somewhere public, but not too public. Get him talking about his plans." "He won't talk in front of you," Tessa said. "He hates you. But he might talk to me if he thinks I'm scared enough." "You are scared enough." "Exactly. I don't have to act." Claire pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. "Recording equipment has come a long way. This will pick up conversations from 20 feet away, and it's completely undetectable." "Where would we do it?" I asked. "His club," Tessa said. "Tomorrow night is Thursday. It's usually pretty empty. He'll feel comfortable there, in control. And if something goes wrong, there will be other people around." "Other people who work for him," Claire pointed out. "Not all of them. The bartender, Alyssa. She doesn't like him. She's been asking me questions about why I'm with him, warning me about his temper." "You think she'd help?" "Maybe. If she knew what he was really planning." We spent the next hour working out details. Tessa would call Kellen and ask to meet him at the club to work things out. She'd wear the recording device and try to get him to admit his real plans. Claire and I would be nearby but out of sight, ready to intervene if things went wrong. It wasn't a great plan, but it was the only one we had. Thursday evening, I sat in my car across the street from Kellen's club, watching people go in and out. The place was busier than Tessa had expected. Apparently Thursday was karaoke night, which meant more witnesses, but also more noise to cover our conversation. "Testing, testing," Claire's voice came through my earpiece. She was in a van parked around the corner, monitoring the recording equipment. "Tessa, can you hear me?" "Yes," came Tessa's nervous reply. She was already inside, sitting at the bar, waiting for Kellen to show up. "Remember? Try to get him talking about the future, about marriage, about money, about what happens if something goes wrong. The more specific he gets, the better." "I understand." "Owen, your backup. Stay outside unless we give you the signal. If this goes bad, we don't want you trapped inside." I didn't like being the backup, but Claire was right. If Kellen saw me, he'd shut down immediately. This only worked if he thought he was in control. "He's here." Tessa's voice crackled through the earpiece. Through the club's windows, I could see Kellen approaching the bar. Even from a distance, his body language screamed aggression, shoulders tight, jaw set, hands clenched into fists. "Tessa." His voice came through clearly. Claire's equipment was working perfectly. "Kellen, thank you for meeting me. You said you wanted to fix things, so fix them. I've been thinking about what you said. About Owen, about the video, about everything. You're right. I should have handled it better. Damn right you should have. Do you have any idea how much damage that little stunt of his has caused? I've had reporters calling the club asking about my finances. I've had customers asking if it's true that I'm broke. Are you?" Silence. Then, "What kind of question is that?" "A fair one. If we're going to be together, I need to know what I'm getting into." "You're getting into a relationship with someone who loves you. Isn't that enough?" "Love doesn't pay the bills, Kellen." "No, but your job does. Your savings account does. Your life insurance policy does." My blood ran cold. He'd just admitted to knowing about her life insurance. "My life insurance?" Tessa's voice was carefully neutral. "Why would that matter?" "Because we're planning a future together, baby. We need to think about all the possibilities. What happens if one of us gets sick or hurt or what? Or has an accident? Shit happens, Tessa. People die every day. Car crashes, drowning, falls downstairs. At least if something happened to you, I'd be able to take care of myself financially." "Is that what happened to Sarah?" Another silence, longer this time. "Who told you about Sarah?" "Does it matter? Did you kill her, Kellen?" "Her name was Sandra, not Sarah, and she drowned. It was an accident." "Was it?" "Of course it was. We were out on a boat, she'd been drinking, she fell overboard. Tragic accident." "And you inherited everything." "I was her husband. That's how marriage works." Through the window, I could see Kellen moving closer to Tessa. His posture was becoming more aggressive, more threatening. "Is that what you're planning for me?" Tessa asked quietly. "What are you talking about? Are you planning to marry me and then arrange an accident? You're being paranoid." "Am I? Because it seems like a pretty good plan. Isolate me from my friends, marry me quickly, then find a way to get rid of me and inherit my money." "Tessa, you're starting to piss me off." "Good, because I'm pissed off too. Did you really think I was that stupid? Stupid enough to cheat on your fiancé with me? Stupid enough to fall for your act, you mean? The charming nightclub owner, the romantic gestures, the whole Prince Charming routine. How many women have you done this to, Kevin?" The use of his real name was like throwing a match into gasoline. Through the window, I saw him grab Tessa's arm. "How do you know that name?" "I know a lot of things. I know about Cleveland and Phoenix and Denver. I know about Sandra and Maria and Jennifer. I know you're broke, your club is failing, and you're looking for another victim to save your sorry ass." "You little bitch." "I'm wearing a wire, Kevin. Everything you've said tonight is being recorded, so unless you want to add assault to your list of crimes, I suggest you let go of my arm." That was our signal. I was out of the car and running toward the club before Claire could say anything through the earpiece. The bouncer at the door tried to stop me, but I pushed past him. "Call the police," I shouted. "There's a woman in danger." I burst through the club's main door just as Kellen was dragging Tessa toward a back exit. The few customers in the place were staring, but nobody was moving to help. "Let her go!" I yelled. Kellen spun around, still gripping Tessa's arm. This is all your fault!" "Actually, it's your fault for being a murdering psychopath. But let's not split hairs." He let go of Tessa and came at me like a charging bull. I'd never been in a real fight before, but desperation and adrenaline are powerful motivators. I managed to dodge his first swing and land a lucky punch to his solar plexus that doubled him over. "Stay down," I warned him. He didn't listen. He came at me again, this time with what looked like a knife. I heard Tessa scream, heard someone else shout for security, heard the distant sound of sirens. The knife caught me across the ribs, a burning line of pain that made me stumble backward. But before Kellen could follow up, the bartender, Alyssa, hit him over the head with a bottle of vodka. He went down hard and didn't get back up. "Are you okay?" Tessa was beside me, pressing a bar towel against the cut on my ribs. "I'll live," I said, though the pain was making me dizzy. "Did we get it? Did we get him confessing?" "We got everything," Claire said, appearing beside us with the recording equipment. "Assault, conspiracy, admission to murder. He's done." The police arrived a few minutes later, followed by paramedics who insisted on taking me to the hospital despite my protests that the cut wasn't that deep. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I saw Kellen being handcuffed and read his rights. "Owen?" Tessa climbed into the ambulance beside me. "I'm so sorry. For everything. You saved my life tonight." "You saved your own life," I said. "I just provided backup." "Can you forgive me?" I looked at her for a long moment. The woman who'd humiliated me in public, who'd cheated on me for months, who'd let her friends turn me into a viral joke. But also the woman who'd had the courage to wear a wire and confront a killer, who'd risked her life to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. "I forgive you," I said. "But that doesn't mean I want you back." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I don't deserve another chance. But thank you for giving me the chance to live." The ambulance doors closed, and we headed for the hospital. Through the rear window, I could see Claire talking to the police, probably explaining about the recording and the evidence we'd gathered. It was over. Kellen was going to prison, Tessa was safe, and I was free to start over. The cut on my ribs would heal, the viral video would be forgotten, and someday, this would all just be a story I told at parties. But first, I had some thank you cards to write. The story broke on every local news channel the next morning. "Viral breakup leads to murder plot arrest" was the headline on Channel 7. By afternoon, it had gone national. I watched the coverage from my hospital bed, still groggy from the pain medication they'd given me for the knife wound. It turned out to be deeper than I'd thought. 7 stitches and a tetanus shot, plus orders to take it easy for the next week. "You're famous again," Hannah said, settling into the visitor's chair with a cup of terrible hospital coffee. But this time for the right reasons. The news coverage was surreal. They showed clips from the original restaurant video, then my response video, then footage of Kellen being arrested outside his club. The narrative had completely flipped. Instead of being the pathetic guy who got dumped in public, I was now the hero who'd saved his ex-fiancée from a serial killer. "The FBI is involved now," Hannah continued. "Apparently they've been tracking Kevin Pratt for 2 years, but they could never get enough evidence to arrest him. Your recording gave them everything they needed." "What about the other women?" "Sandra's death in Denver is being reclassified as a homicide. They're also looking into the disappearance of a woman in Portland who was engaged to someone matching Kellen's description." My phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, friend requests on social media, and messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. The dodged a bullet hashtag was trending again, but this time people were using it to share stories about escaping toxic relationships. "There's something else," Hannah said, looking uncomfortable. "Lisa and Marcy want to see you." "Absolutely not." "Hear me out. They feel terrible about what happened. They had no idea Kellen was dangerous. They thought they were just helping Tessa make a dramatic exit from a relationship she didn't want to be in. By filming it and posting it online, they know it was wrong. Lisa took the video down yesterday and posted an apology. She's getting destroyed in the comments, but she's not defending herself. She says she deserves it. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to let them stew in their guilt forever, but the bigger part of me was just tired of being angry. Fine, 5 minutes. They showed up an hour later, looking like they were attending their own funeral. Lisa's usually perfect appearance was disheveled, and Marcy looked like she'd been crying for days. "Owen," Lisa started, then stopped. "I don't know what to say. I'm sorry I helped orchestrate your public humiliation and then posted it online for the world to see." She flinched. "I'm sorry. We're both sorry. We thought... God, this sounds so stupid now, but we thought we were helping Tessa find happiness." "By destroying my reputation?" "We didn't think about that part," Marcy said quietly. "We were so focused on the romance of it all, Tessa finding her true love, the dramatic gesture, the fairy tale ending. We didn't consider how cruel it was to you, or how dangerous Kellen was." "No," Lisa said. If we'd had any idea what he was planning." "You would have what? Called off the whole thing? Or just made sure there weren't any cameras around when he killed her?" That was harsh, but I was still processing everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, I'd thought my biggest problem was being internet famous for getting dumped. Now I was internet famous for stopping a serial killer. "We would have called the police," Marcy said firmly. "Whatever you think of us, we wouldn't have let anyone get hurt." I studied their faces, looking for signs of deception, but all I saw was genuine remorse and horror at how close their friend had come to being murdered. "The video is down?" I asked. "Completely deleted," Lisa said, "from every platform, and I posted a full apology explaining what really happened. I'm probably going to lose my job over this, but I don't care. What I did was unforgivable." "What about the edited version that made me look crazy?" "Gone, and I posted the unedited footage so people can see what really happened." I nodded. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was something. "Are you going to be okay?" Marcy asked. "I mean physically?" 7 stitches and some bruised ribs. I'll live." "And Tessa? What about her? Are you going to get back together?" I almost laughed. "No, definitely not. What we had is over, and it was over long before Kellen came into the picture. But I don't hate her anymore." "That's very mature of you," Lisa said. I lay there listening to the building settle around me, the soft creak of pipes, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional shout from the street that rose and faded like a wave, and I tried to let my body believe it was safe enough to stop bracing. The ribs complained every time I inhaled too deeply, a dull insistence that made me breathe shallow and careful, but the ache also anchored me in the present, because pain was honest in a way people weren't. It didn't flatter you, didn't manipulate you, didn't pretend to be one thing while planning another. It just existed, and if you listened to it, it told you where you were broken and what you had to protect. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, tracing invisible lines in the plaster, and for a moment I felt something like grief for the version of me that had walked into this week with a simple plan, a petty plan, a plan that belonged to a smaller man. That man wanted vindication and a clean ending, a neatly packaged moment where the person who humiliated him finally understood what she'd thrown away. Instead, life had handed me sirens, blood on pavement, questions I couldn't dodge, and a courtroom future that would play out slowly, with motions and hearings and the kind of paperwork that turned tragedy into a schedule. Somewhere in the building, a door closed gently, and I imagined the people who'd been here earlier, the ones who'd brought flowers and awkward jokes and sympathy that didn't quite know where to land, walking back into their normal lives, while mine sat here swollen and bruised, waiting for daylight to demand performance. I hated the word hero, not because it was insulting, but because it was lazy, because it flattened a complicated night into a headline, and it let strangers feel good about the world without having to understand how close it had come to being cruel. I hadn't been brave in the cinematic way people wanted. I had been stubborn and furious and unwilling to watch one more person get hurt while someone else stood by pretending it wasn't their problem. That felt less like virtue and more like a reflex that had finally kicked in after years of swallowing my instincts for the sake of peace. I thought about Tessa's message, about the careful humility in it, and I wondered if she understood what forgiveness actually was, because it wasn't a gift I gave her out of generosity. It was something I gave myself, so I didn't have to carry her betrayal like a stone in my pocket for the rest of my life. Forgiveness didn't mean she was right, and it didn't mean I was okay with what she'd done. It meant I refused to let her choices dictate my mood, my future, my capacity to trust anyone again. It meant I wanted my life back more than I wanted her to suffer, even if part of me still enjoyed the memory of Kellen's panic when the cuffs clicked shut, the sudden collapse of his confidence when he realized he couldn't talk his way out of a cage. That satisfaction wasn't noble, but it was human, and I was done pretending I wasn't allowed to feel human things. I shifted carefully, wincing as my side flared, and I reached for the cup of water on the bedside table, swallowing slowly, like each sip was a small agreement with tomorrow. Because tomorrow wasn't going to be quiet. Tomorrow would bring cameras and microphones and that bright, hungry look reporters got when they wanted you to cry on cue. They would ask what I thought in the moment, as if the moment had contained thoughts instead of adrenaline and noise and the sickening understanding that one wrong move would end someone's life. They would ask if I'd forgive Tessa and whether I believed in second chances and whether I felt changed by what happened, and I would have to decide how much truth to hand over to people who would cut it into pieces for clicks. I imagined standing in front of a row of strangers holding notepads, my ribs wrapped, my face still marked by exhaustion, and I could already hear the questions turning me into a symbol rather than a person. So I made myself a promise in the dark, a promise quiet enough that it felt real. I would speak in facts, not feelings, because feelings were the part everyone tried to steal. I would thank the officers and the medics and the witnesses who hadn't looked away. I would refuse to romanticize what happened, because romance was how people ignored warning signs until it was too late. And when they asked about revenge, because someone always asked about revenge, I would tell them the truth in the simplest words I could find. That revenge had been my excuse to stay angry, and anger had been my excuse to stay connected to someone who didn't deserve access to my mind anymore. Doing the right thing hadn't made me holy. It had just snapped a chain I didn't realize I was still wearing. The room felt warmer as my body finally started to unclench, and I let my eyelids fall again. Not because everything was resolved, not because I was suddenly healed, but because rest was the first step of living well, and living well, I realized, wasn't a slogan. It was a decision you made again and again, especially when the world tried to turn your pain into entertainment. 6 months later, I was sitting in a different restaurant, a small Italian place downtown where the pasta was excellent, and nobody charged $18 for avocado toast. Across from me sat Detective Sarah Mitchell, a fraud investigator with the FBI who'd been working the Kevin Pratt case. The Portland woman turned up, she said, twirling linguine around her fork. Alive, thankfully. She figured out what Pratt was planning and disappeared before he could hurt her. She's been living under an assumed name in Seattle for the past year. That's good news. Very good news. Her testimony, combined with your recording and the evidence from the other cases, means Pratt is looking at life without parole. He'll never hurt anyone again. Sarah was smart, funny, and had the kind of confidence that came from carrying a badge and knowing how to use the gun that went with it. We'd met during the investigation and had been dating for 3 months now. It was different from my relationship with Tessa. Calmer, more honest, built on mutual respect instead of drama and manipulation. "What about his club?" I asked. "Closed permanently. The city revoked his liquor license, and the building owner evicted him for non-payment of rent. Alyssa, the bartender who helped you, is opening her own place across town. She asked me to thank you again for getting that psychopath off the streets. She's the one who knocked him out with a vodka bottle. I should be thanking her. You both did good that night." My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. The Dodged a Bullet account I'd created had grown to over 100,000 followers, and I'd been using it to share stories about recognizing red flags in relationships and supporting domestic violence survivors. It had become something bigger than I'd ever intended. "Speaking of doing good," Sarah said, "have you decided about the book deal?" A publisher had approached me about writing a book about the whole experience, part memoir, part guide to recognizing manipulative partners. I'd been hesitant at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it might help other people avoid what I'd gone through. "I think I'm going to do it," I said. "If it helps even one person recognize the warning signs before it's too late, it'll be worth it." "What about Tessa? Are you going to include her side of the story?" "I don't know. We haven't talked since that night at the hospital." That wasn't entirely true. She'd sent me a card on my birthday, and I'd heard through mutual friends that she was in therapy, trying to understand how she'd gotten involved with someone like Kellen. But we hadn't had any direct contact, which was probably for the best. "Do you miss her?" Sarah asked. It was a fair question, and one I'd asked myself many times over the past few months. "I miss who I thought she was," I said finally. "I miss the idea of the life we were supposed to have together. But I don't miss the reality of what our relationship actually was. The constant tension, the feeling like I was always walking on eggshells, the way she made me feel like I wasn't good enough. And now? Now I feel like myself again, for the first time in years." Sarah smiled. "Good, because I like who you are." We finished dinner and walked back to my car, passing the restaurant where Tessa had dumped me 6 months earlier. It was strange how different the place looked now, smaller somehow, less significant. What had seemed like the end of the world at the time now felt like just another chapter in a much longer story. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said as we drove home. "If Tessa hadn't dumped me that day, I never would have found out about Kellen's plan. She'd probably be dead right now, and he'd be off somewhere looking for his next victim." "You think she planned it that way?" "No, she's not that smart. But sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up being the best things in disguise." Very philosophical. I've had a lot of time to think about it. We pulled up in front of Sarah's apartment building. She leaned over and kissed me goodnight. Soft, sweet, uncomplicated. "I'll see you tomorrow?" she asked. "Absolutely." I watched her walk into her building, then drove home to my condo. It looked different now, too. I'd gotten rid of most of the stuff Tessa had left behind and redecorated with things I actually liked. The abstract art was gone, replaced by photographs I'd taken on weekend trips. The fancy coffee maker had been donated to charity, replaced by a simple drip machine that made perfectly good coffee without requiring an engineering degree to operate. I sat down at my computer and opened the document where I'd been working on the book. The working title was "Dodged a Bullet: How a Public Breakup Saved My Life." It wasn't great, but it was honest. Chapter 1 began. The mimosa in my hand tasted like regret and artificial orange flavoring. I should have known something was wrong when Tessa insisted on brunch at Meridian. I'd written and rewritten that opening paragraph dozens of times, trying to capture the exact moment when my old life ended and my new one began. It had taken me months to realize that the moment wasn't when Tessa dumped me, or when Kellen showed up, or even when I posted that response video. The moment my new life began was when I decided to stop being a victim and start fighting back. My phone buzzed with a text from Hannah. Saw the news about Kellen's sentencing. Life without parole. How does it feel to know you put a serial killer behind bars? I thought about it for a moment, then typed back, like I dodged a bullet. She responded with a laughing emoji and a string of bullet emojis. I smiled and went back to writing. There was still a lot of story to tell, and somewhere out there, someone needed to hear it. Someone who was in the same situation I'd been in 6 months ago, trapped in a toxic relationship, being manipulated and controlled, thinking it was normal. Maybe my story would help them recognize the warning signs. Maybe it would give them the courage to leave. Maybe it would save their life. Or maybe it would just entertain people who liked reading about other people's drama. Either way, it was a story worth telling. I wrote until midnight, then closed the laptop and headed to bed. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with the publisher, dinner plans with Sarah, and a phone interview with a podcast about domestic violence awareness. It was a good life. Not the life I'd planned, but better than the one I'd been living. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well, helping others, and being grateful for the bullets you've dodged. But I had to admit, knowing that Kevin Pratt would spend the rest of his life in a 6x8 cell was pretty satisfying too. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about that morning 6 months ago when I'd woken up engaged to a woman who was planning to humiliate me in public. If someone had told me then that by Christmas I'd be dating an FBI agent, writing a book, and running a social media account that helped domestic violence survivors, I'd have thought they were insane. Life is funny that way. Sometimes the worst day of your life turns out to be the first day of your real life. And sometimes the woman who breaks your heart in a restaurant full of strangers ends up being the best thing that ever happened to you. Not because of who she was, but because of who you became after she left. I fell asleep smiling, grateful for every bullet I'd dodged, every lesson I'd learned, and every day I got to wake up as the person I was meant to be.